Cataplexy is a chronic sleep disorder that typically presents with two major symptoms: excessive daytime sleepiness and cataplexy. Excessive daytime sleepiness makes it difficult for patients with narcolepsy to function normally during school and work because they have trouble maintaining their concentration. This requires them to often take some sort of medication along with making lifestyle changes in order to combat the decreased level of wakefulness they experience. This video, however, will focus on the second major symptom of narcolepsy, which is cataplexy. We will be defining cataplexy and explaining the neurobiological processes that lead to it, as well as a certain gene that may be associated with it. Not all people who have a form of narcolepsy experience cataplexy, but to be diagnosed with narcolepsy with cataplexy, the symptom of cataplexy must be present. This makes cataplexy a pathognomonic symptom of narcolepsy with cataplexy, meaning that it is a symptom that is characteristic of that disease and must be present for it to be diagnosed. Cataplexy is characterized by a loss of muscle tone in response to a strong emotion. Some attacks of cataplexy are very severe, and patients are unable to remain standing during them. Other attacks are much more mild and might just include drooping eyelids or a slight dropping of the head. Often during these attacks, speech becomes slurred as well. Cataplexy attacks like these result from a positive emotion, such as laughing or telling a joke to a friend. To understand the biology that underlies cataplexy, we need to first understand what happens in the brain to lead to rapid eye movement sleep. During the portion of the night that a person is in rapid eye movement sleep, they become immobile and lose their muscle tone so that they don't act out their dreams and injure themselves. This phenomenon is called rapid eye movement sleep atonia. Cataplexy occurs when this type of atonia happens when someone is awake and they lose their muscle tone like they would during rapid eye movement sleep. There are neurons in the medulla that, when excited, lead to atonia. During rapid eye movement sleep, these neurons are excited, which leads to the inhibition of spinal alpha motor neurons. The job of these neurons is to cause muscle contractions that result from voluntary movement. When they are inhibited, the person becomes unable to make voluntary movements, therefore leading to atonia and cataplexy. There are two brain regions that are thought to be working improperly in order to cause cataplexy: the amygdala and the hypothalamus. The amygdala is a structure located here in the brain that deals with both fear and emotion. Research has shown that neurons in this region of the brain fire differently in dogs with cataplexy, indicating that something might be functioning improperly. The hypothalamus is indicated in this picture and functions in regulation of processes such as hunger, thirst, and sleep or circadian rhythm. Hypocretin, also called orexin, is a peptide found in the hypothalamus that functions in the sleep-wake cycle, feeding, and reward. Narcolepsy has been associated with a loss of orexin, which leads to some of the symptoms that narcoleptic patients experience. To test both of these regions, the hypothalamus and the amygdala, one study used fMRI, or functional magnetic resonance imaging, to compare the brain activity of people with narcolepsy and people without narcolepsy when they looked at both neutral and funny stimuli. fMRI measures the blood oxygen levels in a person's brain in response to certain stimuli that a person might be seeing or hearing. With this technique, we are able to see the different areas of a person's brain that are active at different times. Researchers from this study found that when looking at funny stimuli, control patients, or patients without narcolepsy, showed the largest activity difference in the right hypothalamus. Patients with narcolepsy didn't show any differences when looking at humorous stimuli, indicating some sort of dysfunctionality in their hypothalamus. The right amygdala of patients with narcolepsy also responded to the funny stimuli a lot more than the right amygdala of control patients. So along with exhibiting less activity in the hypothalamus, patients with narcolepsy also exhibited more activation in the amygdala. The researchers suggest that these findings are indicative of a pathway that is occurring in the brain when a person feels emotions. This pathway might be disrupted in individuals with narcolepsy. In a person without narcolepsy, hypocretin is produced by the hypothalamus and is used to help modulate the activity of the amygdala during emotion processing. The amount of hypocretin is going to be less in people with narcolepsy, so the activation in the hypothalamus in these individuals will also be less. Because of this, the amount that the hypothalamus is able to modulate the amygdala will decrease. When that happens, the amygdala will respond more strongly during emotion processing. The dysfunction of this pathway is able to explain both the reduced activity in the hypothalamus and the increased activity in the amygdala in response to a funny stimuli in people with narcolepsy, which may explain part of the pathophysiology of cataplexy. It has been found that narcolepsy has links to an allele found on the HLA gene on chromosome 6. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. One member of each pair comes from each parent. The main function of the chromosome we are focusing on, chromosome 6, is to recognize and process foreign antigens found in the body. Malfunctions in this chromosome lead the immune system to function improperly, which is why these malfunctions occur in many autoimmune disorders. Each chromosome is made of genes, which are units of DNA that help give us the features we have and help us carry out the functions that we do. Differences can be seen between people in these features and functions, as people have different hair color as well as different abilities to do things, such as math or art. These differences are partially due to alleles, which are forms of the same gene that are slightly different from person to person. In one study, the allele in question on the HLA gene was found in 90% of people with narcolepsy with cataplexy, indicating that the allele is likely associated with cataplexy. Further evidence for this link is that only 40.9% of people who had narcolepsy without cataplexy possessed this allele, suggesting that it is associated specifically with the symptom of cataplexy. This finding has initiated discussion about the possibility of narcolepsy with cataplexy being a type of autoimmune disease, since the same chromosome, chromosome 6, is implicated in many autoimmune disorders as well as narcolepsy. The authors of one study, however, explain that there's no evidence of a weakened or otherwise damaged immune system or any sort of inflammation in people with narcolepsy. With this evidence, it seems unlikely that narcolepsy fits the definition of a typical autoimmune disorder, but this is an idea that could be explored more in future research. So remember, narcolepsy is a chronic sleep disorder that often includes the symptom of cataplexy, which is loss of muscle tone experienced during a strong emotion. Narcolepsy is linked to a loss of hypocretin or orexin, which is found in the hypothalamus. Narcoleptic patients exhibit less excitation in the hypothalamus and more activity in the amygdala when viewing funny stimuli, indicating that both of those brain regions play a role in cataplexy. An allele on the HLA gene is also linked to cataplexy, which is shown by the fact that it is found much more frequently in people who have narcolepsy with cataplexy than in people who have narcolepsy without the symptom of cataplexy.